there, today I'm going to show you how to cover spiral notebooks for school notebooks. And the process would work for notebooks for any type of purpose, but I thought it would be fun this time of the year to do some things for school subjects. We're going to do two notebooks. The first one we're going to cover with paper that will go close to the spiral part but won't actually go underneath the spiral area, so I picked a pattern paper that matches the background of the notebook. The other notebook we're going to do, I'm actually going to take my pattern paper in underneath the spiral part, and you do not have to take the spiral out in order to do that. So we'll do that one in a few minutes. Let's start with this first notebook that's going to be designed for a younger child. In either case, you're going to need some pattern paper, and I recommend kind of a medium weight pattern paper. I would stay away from the really thin papers. Here's a notebook that I did several years ago for myself, and I used it for about 6 months, and I used some of the really thin paper, and you can see how very worn it got on the edges. The heavier papers will get a little bit worn, but not nearly so bad. They'll hold up and they'll look better over time. I would stay away from the really thick papers like the My Mind's Eye textured papers. Those are really hard to fold. So this is a paper from Pebbles, Bella Boulevard, Studio Calico, Echo Park. All of those companies make papers that are a good weight, and there are certainly other companies as well. You'll need a paper that's at least 12 inches long to go over your 11-inch long notebook. And it doesn't have to be that wide, though. What I'm going to do is open the notebook up and mark about how far over I want to cut it, the paper. Okay. And then I'll just take that to the paper trimmer and cut it down.
The adhesive I usually use for this type of project is a tape adhesive. I'm using one from Creative Memories, and I know they're no longer making these kinds of products, but you could use like the red sticky tape or anything that's going to hold really well. I'm applying a layer of the adhesive over close to the holes, pulling off the cover to it, and then centering the paper on top of the notebook, again close to the holes but not right on top of them, and pressing that down really well. Then I open up my notebook and I'm ready to fold the paper back onto the back side. I'm using a bone folder to score this and make my folds. You could use a ruler, would work fine. And this is where those really thick papers would be a challenge. They are a challenge, I've tried them before. Okay, I've done the two ends, and now I'm going to open those up and do the side. Now I'm ready to do the corners. So I'll open the ends back out again and trim out the corner, just the little square where the creases are, and trim a little bit away on one edge so that when it folds over you don't have any paper hanging off the edges. I'm going to use some more of my sticky type of adhesive, strip kind of adhesive, or you could use a glue here. Just applying it to the top and the bottom first, folding those in place, and then I'll do the side of the notebook. I ran out of tape there and had to go to a new roll. You want to make sure that the adhesive goes all the way to the ends so you don't have any loose edges that'll get torn. Fold that over and you've got the inside attached, and we'll put a cover over that at the end of the project. So now it's ready to decorate the front cover. For decorating the front, since this is for a young child, I have some stickers I got at Hobby Lobby that are very general, school oriented. They had these for all the different grades, at least through 8th grade. I didn't really look beyond that. But I just picked some very general ones. I like the schoolhouse. I really like that apple, but I didn't care for the purple background. So I went to my Cricut and I cut out my own apple, and I'm going to put an A on top of that. You want things that are very flat, so I'm probably going to use some additional stickers. The reason you want things that are flat is so that when you open up the notebook and somebody's writing in there, they don't have anything lumpy on the front cover that's keeping their writing from being neat. You can use ribbons as long as they're very flat, and I have some twill ribbon that I'm going to play with as well for this front cover. Now I've cut out the A. This was all from the Plantin School Book cartridge on the Cricut. You could use purchased die cuts as well. And I did a green apples too so I could get the little leaf design there. And what I do for the stems is cover those just with a marker, since I just want that to be a dark color. Okay. Now I decided I needed some black trim on this because the stickers had a lot of black in there, so I used a piece of black cardstock and I'm cutting it with a decorative edge punch, or you could use decorative scissors. Again, it's just a nice flat embellishment, and I'm playing with the arrangement of things. I'm looking at maybe moving that black piece over to the left and the trim over to the right. I've put a couple of additional stickers on there. I'm about ready to glue some of these things down. These stickers held really well, so they didn't need any extra glue. I'm using Tombow Mono adhesive from my liquid glue, because it holds really well. The one problem I did have was this ribbon. I put too much adhesive on it. I ended up having to take it off and redo it. So be careful when you're doing things like that that you don't get too much adhesive and it comes through the front. Papers you're usually okay with, but the trims, they can bleed through. You can always use hot glue gun or glue dots. And I have some other stickers here from October Afternoon. Place for the teacher and a place where you might write the child's name. And there's our notebook on the front. We'll get back to that in a moment. For the inside, this is a good place to use those thinner papers or copy paper, anything just to cover up that inside. I trimmed it down and glued it on, and now we have this notebook all finished and ready to move on to the next one. I'm gearing this notebook to an older child. So I'm using, it's a college ruled notebook, that's the only difference between it and the first one. I'm using some papers from Studio Calico, the yearbook collection, which was last year's school collection, and I have some papers from Simple Stories from a 6x6 pad. In this case, I'm going to take the paper and I want it to go down in between the rings in the spiral rings, but I'm not going to take the notebook apart, but I will need a hole punch. I have a Crocodile, but you can use any type of hole punch. To do this, you just need to pull out a sheet of the notebook paper. And you want to do it carefully as to not tear too many of the little holes. I got a few torn off there at the top. That's okay, as long as I've got something to mark by. And sometimes I mark on the front, but a lot of times I mark on the back side. That way I know the marks won't show, and I can see it better. In the case of this really busy print, I can see where I'm doing my pencil marks a little bit easier. I just need enough of that edge so that I make sure I get the paper lined up good, centered between the two edges, and leave enough border so my holes will be punched far enough in on the paper. And I'm just going over each hole and marking them with a pencil so I'll know where to do my hole punching. And again, I'm using a Crocodile for the hole punch, but it can just be a regular office hole punch. Like the Crocodile has the drawback of not emptying its holes very well, so it takes a little bit of time. It'll punch through just about anything, but it can be a little slower. Once I get all the holes punched, then I'm going to cut a slit in the paper up to the hole, and I'm cutting it on the diagonal because I found that that will hold a little bit better. So I just cut all the way down, little diagonal snips. That goes really fast. Okay. And once I have those cut out, then I'm going to lay the paper back over the front cover of the notebook and start pushing the pieces of paper down in between the spiral portion of the notebook. Just pushing them in place, and a lot of times it helps to use a pair of scissors or the bone folder or something to help push them in there. Using my fingers here. Just kind of working all those in. And we're going to glue them. We're not just going to depend on them to stay there. So here's one where I had to get the scissors up there to it. So I open the cover out, make sure that everything's in place good. And I'm going to be using the Mono Tombow liquid glue. So that holds really well. and just applying a small dot of glue on the notebook behind the spiral metal part, taking care not to get down in the holes. This is a glue that holds really well, but if it doesn't end up sticking to something, it becomes a sticky surface itself, and it stays that way forever. So you want to make sure it goes where it's supposed to go. And I like it because you can control it and get a very tiny dot. All right, and then I'm going to fold the paper back over top of where the spirals are, and then press carefully with my finger and just make sure I've got the glue, got each of these glued on. And then I'll leave this for probably a few minutes to make sure that it's good and dry before I start messing with the rest of the notebook. I use my scissors actually to press everything in place really good. It doesn't take long, maybe 5 minutes at the most for that glue to hold. It's already kind of sticking pretty good. Make sure that it's, again, that the glue's not gone down in any of the holes. And then we'll just leave it, and we'll come back and we'll go through exactly the process that we did with the first notebook, except that because we're folding this one over the entire front, you're going to have to notch out a little bit on the top and the bottom right where the spiral is. Don't cut all the way to the very front, but just to notch out a little corner there, then we'll come back and add a little extra glue to it. We're going to do the same thing on the outside corners, trimming out where they're scored and trimming then a little bit off of the end that you fold over the top so that it doesn't hang off the front side. It's a little bit like making an envelope. Adding my adhesive. And notice I didn't add any other adhesive to the front. That glue is plenty. And now this is where we're going to add a little bit of the liquid glue to the piece that you have folded up on the top and the bottom right next to the spiral part. Just a little bit of paper there, and that makes a really nice finished cover. And now we can decorate it. So I've got a 6x6 paper there in the middle. I've cut out a card, what looks like a library card from one of the other pieces from this collection. I have some more papers, both from the yearbook collection and from Simple Stories 24/7. I'm going to punch out some of these circles. I decided to add some distress ink around the edges to all the pieces. Again, this is for an older child, so a little more of the distress look works. I have a sticker that I want to add to the front. And I felt like I needed something in the middle of those circles, and I really can't use a brad because it's going to be too lumpy. I had these little pieces of chipboard. These actually came out, they were like periods or something out of that set of thickers. They're just little tiny black pieces of chipboard, the middle of O's, something like that. You just want something that's going to be very flat. And now I would probably put the child's name on that sticker on the front. In fact, I do that in the finished one you'll see in just a moment. Here's our first one that we finished up, where I have the paper going close to the holes but not underneath them. And then there's our A. Die cuts work really well. You can also stamp on the front of these. That's a nice flat thing to do that gives them extra interest. And here's our finished second notebook and a close-up of the spiral portion. Thank you for watching.